I serve as the president and CEO of the Conference of Churches, and I've been with this organization for 13 years. And our mission is to engage transformational leaders to create a healthy and just community. And so it's all about how we gather different leaders with different strengths so we can create a new Hartford, a Hartford that is uplifted, a Hartford that has vitality. And that's the focus of our ministry and our work, especially gathering the pastors of the Conference of Churches. Well, when I had the conversation with the mayor initially, I was surprised. I was not seeking additional service in the city at this point in time, and I asked him for some time to think about it so I could talk to friends and family, pray about it, and see if I can add any value. And I appreciate my Facebook community because I put it out there amongst my network of friends, and the response was much more than I expected. There was no. There was no word from people, don't do it. In my faith community, it was the same thing. People were saying there's a need for people to be involved in the Hartford Board of Education and our school system and public education. People have said, you say that you care about public education. You see this as the next civil rights issue of our times. You believe that education is a thing that transforms people's lives. You are committed to education. You must serve on the Board of Education. And I can recall right after I had the meeting with the mayor, the bishop of my organization contacted me, and she was looking for something for me to work on. And I said, you know, Bishop, I just had this meeting with the mayor and he asked me to serve on the board and I have so many things to do, I can't imagine. She said, you must do it. You must serve on the Board of Education. So I received a lot of support from people that I need to jump in and be involved. And in many ways, we have to walk the walk instead of just talking about it. And I have learned a lot in my brief time period being on the board. There is much to know. And there are a lot of really good people who are very committed to the cause of public education. I have learned a lot through Achieve Hartford along the way as we've been working together. And now that I'm sitting in this chair, I am really hungry for even more knowledge and seeing what's going on nationally because we need to be a turnaround school system in Hartford. And so that's the learning curve for all of us as leaders and all of us working together to make that happen in the city. I'm fortunate that I grew up in a small town in the northwest corner of Connecticut called Norfolk, Connecticut. And so my father was an integrationist and he was really committed to civil rights. He grew up in Harlem, New York, and he wanted our family to be a family that put our flesh on the line. And so as a family, we moved into Norfolk, Connecticut, and we were a part of integration in that community. In the 50s, late 50s and early 60s, I was the only child in the entire elementary school that was of color, and it meant showing up and it meant dealing with people where they were, and clearly racism was a part of where people were at the time. I can remember very clearly being ignored in the classroom or not being given extra help from the teacher. And when I entered kindergarten, I was already reading. And I was fortunate that there was a third grade teacher, Mrs. Keeler, and she saw a spark in me. And she recognized that I had already read all the textbooks by the time I got through third grade. And she allowed me to read the next round of textbooks, so I read all the textbooks up to sixth grade. And then every reading period, she would let me go to the library and they would have me read encyclopedias and other books because they knew I needed something more. Needless to say, I had the experience of public education in Norfolk, Connecticut. While there might have been some cultural issues there, I received a superb education. And sadly, we are in other communities where that's not the reality, that public education may not give a superb education. And I believe every child deserves that opportunity. And I know my ability to have some of those basic skills early on are what fueled my success and the opportunities of my life. And I believe every child deserves that opportunity. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars being put into public education. We are the United States of America, and I believe we should have the capacity to educate all children. And so here in Hartford, no less should be expected. Our children deserve a superb public education. We have the resources. We're in one of the richest states in the United States. We're surrounded by top-line educational institutions. There are brilliant people in all of our communities. We can do this. We just have to really come together and work together. And we're going to have to think out of the box and do some things differently. And so that's why I'm really committed to seeing what we can do here in Hartford, because we've got the resources economically, we have the thought leadership, we just really have to collaborate how we work together and use some of the best strategies that are there for us to turn things around. And I see that we are making some progress when it comes to creating facilities and buildings. But the next phase is to really build up people so they can change how they're operating to improve the quality of education for our children.
So when you described what you do here at the Conference of Churches, transformational leaders was one of the words that I heard. In your vision of education, do you see that same model being effective in education? Should education be transformative in the same work in the way that you believe it here at the Conference of Churches? Or should education be as it was when you were going through your schooling?
Well, I think that we're at a time where in education, especially in a place like Hartford, we cannot deny that there are demoralized educators. I think that school teachers of this generation have taken a terrible beating, especially when it comes to urban education. Part of transformational leadership is to shift the way you think and to believe in the ability to change either yourself or situation. So a lot of it is change management. It's how to think differently, how to not have yourself be stuck in thoughts that might be limiting or approaches that might be limiting. And so change managers come into situations and help people see things with new eyes. It's the paradigm shift. I know that that's my expertise, to be a person who shifts the paradigm. I think in public education, we have a lot of educators, and I see it now, we have some young adult educators that are coming into our school system who have new thought, who are inspired, who have the fire in the belly to do things. And then we have some seasoned educators that no longer have that spark. Life has a way sometimes of wearing a person out where they don't try to change anymore. Their life is such where they just want to be comfortable. They want to take it easy, they want to be on automatic pilot, or they're so burned out, they're so demoralized, they're not trying to do much more anymore. And that's the flaw of bureaucracy. I've worked in state government before, and I know that bureaucracy can take away innovation. And so in the city of Hartford, in public education, like many education systems, there is a significant population of people who are committed to bureaucracy, maintaining the status quo. And then you have change agents who come in, who are on fire, the new employees, the new teachers who have the newest approach to education. They have new strategies, new models. They come in on fire, but the bureaucrats and the maintainers are like, don't do all that. And so that's the rub. And so when we have a system like this, part of the challenge will be to shake things up and find ways to shake things up, because when it comes to taking on systems like this, it's very hard to change things. When we have unions that are committed to keeping people secure, then oftentimes we can't shift where we need to. And so it's a matter of having conversations with union leaders, because I believe deep down inside, leaders want a good school system. I don't believe that they created a union to protect teachers because they don't want quality education, but they've just gotten comfortable. I think that comfortableness is part of what it is to be middle-aged. Middle-aged people, after a while, want to be comfortable. And I think that that's what we see in our system. It's not to say we're against middle age, but we've got to have the flexibility. We've got to have the nimbleness to change with the times. And our children need that. And the times demand that. And so when we look at transformational leadership here in the Conference of Churches, it's all about being nimble, being cutting edge, having the ability to execute tasks effectively and quickly. trying to avoid waste of time and energy. So it's analyzing all those systems and processes so we can make change happen. Because when we look at ministry, we believe it's all about social change and improving communities. And so we believe that those energies can be applied to the school system as well. Well, for this phase of my leadership, I know that I'm just coming in. So I have a learning curve. There's a lot of things for me to learn from the other members of the board, other community leaders who have been at this much longer than I have. And I think that really for my first year, I'm looking at a 2-year term, a lot of it will be spent on learning so much. So I think that my contribution to the board is that of the student. And that is as the professional student for the good of our community. So I ask the questions that I think a lot of people who are at home are wondering too. So part of my role is to not be ashamed of the fact that there's a lot I don't know. And when I have technical experts come and give testimony or presentations and they speak in language that is uncommon to the average parent or average person that doesn't work in education, my role is to say, I'm not quite understanding that. What does that mean? And how does that translate to the parent? And how does that translate to the child? So a lot of my approach, I believe, is to bring forth common sense, which I think is of value to the community. We have lots of great experts, but if the average community person, average parent doesn't understand what they're talking about, then it's not really of value as much to the parent or the child. So I see my role as finding ways to create common knowledge so that way parents can be more actively engaged and the community can be more actively engaged in the education system, because it shouldn't be the education system operating in a silo.
How would you want your time on the board spent? At the end, what's your bookend to your time on the board?
Well, it's definitely hard when I look at a 2-year term, but I think my goal is that I left some clarity in place. I opened some doors so more people could be engaged in the system and the process. I developed an approach that is one where other people are comfortable using it as well. I think that oftentimes when we work in intellectual systems, ego has a way of showing up where no one wants to be embarrassed and no one wants to be thought of as being less than or ignorant. And so if my approach, which might appear to be ignorant, is helpful, then I'd say that might be my legacy, where people can be comfortable asking the common sense questions, because so very often we're doing things which, if it's looked at from people on the outside, they can see where our groupthink has become flawed. And so if I can somehow create bridges where people on the outside can interact with those on the inside of the system, perhaps we can strengthen it for all of us.